Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, we have Ahmed Zidan with us from Hollander Glass. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Danielle.
Thank you. So, tell me about your background.
Well, I started with this company about 10 years ago. I came from a sort of a business administration background. I was brought on as a inside sales rep. And, eventually I would, go on to wear many hats with the company, working on the fabrication line and in the warehouse and eventually outside sales. And, but that's pretty much how I came about with the company. I come from not so much a historical background, but a business administration, marketing background.
Yeah.
Initially.
Well, and that I think that's helpful sometimes to see it from a different perspective than somebody who's coming to it from a preservation standpoint.
Right.
My all of my formal education is in business, but my and there are preservation degrees, but I just never, because I grew up in a preservation, construction company. I never felt like I needed to go to school for it too.
Right. Learned on the job.
Yes. Yeah. So tell me about the company history.
Yeah, sure. Well, Hollander Glass started in the 50s. Essentially, it's a specialty glass distribution company. The namesake of the company, Gary Hollander, had partnered up with Bernie Portman, whose family currently still owns the company. And, essentially it was a powerhouse in the stained glass distribution world, distributing all types of stained glass, both domestic and foreign, as well as stained glass supplies, bevels, tools, and this sort of thing. And then eventually over the past decade, we've evolved into more fabrication. So we have, multiple tempering ovens, a lamination line, digital glass printing line we do now, which is, more of a modern application, but there's definitely still some preservation, some stained glass prints and stuff you could do with that printer. But the company's evolved into now we do insulated glass and polishing and all types of fabrication. So it's a full service specialty glass fabricator at this point.
Well, and we haven't gotten into the products, but that made me curious about when you're talking about the digital. Does that create the etched glass look without having to? Is that what it does? Yeah,
it does that as well. I mean, the machine itself prints in about 1410 DPI, so super high resolution, beyond what even the human eye can see. So I mean, it's giant panels of really bright high def pictures and it could be used for all types of applications. But what you just mentioned, the sort of the etched look is something that in terms of preservation or restoration, that's those etched type of patterns that you can recreate to sort of bring back some of those old styles, as well as we do a modern sort of printed chicken wire, which is it sort of gives that chicken wire look. Obviously without the wire, it's a ceramic ink, but it's in conjunction with some of the pattern glasses, it really creates this sort of old world industrial pattern type product.
Oh, that's really fun. Yeah, we did a project, and this really doesn't have anything to do, I mean, it does have to do with glass, but it's not really the same. But we did a project several years ago at a very early church in Philadelphia, and they had stencils that somebody painted the design on the glass.
Right.
And I thought, but then I guess as technology evolved, then we went to the etching, and now we can, like, do it pretty much digitally. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the history of glass. I know that there were different types of manufacturing processes and variations.
Yeah, I mean, glass is, sheet glass being used for windows goes all the way back, to the first century. But in terms of the kind of glass that we find in sort of modern restoration, the history of that kind of starts around the 1200s with a broad sheet glass. And what that was is essentially a crude tube of glass that was blown and split open and then opened up and cut down into squares or, whatever needed for the application. Eventually that would go on to about in the 1300s, the term crown glass, if you're familiar with that, which is essentially a globe of glass that was spun open to a disc. And then that disc was then cut into, again, squares, rectangles, whatever needed for the window with that center rondelle, or that, that with that.
Oh yeah, the bullseye. Yeah.
Right, the bullseye still being, that nothing would go to waste back then. You'd find that being used in the back of the house or whatever part of the window. And then eventually you'd go on to, through the 1600s, you got was about blown plate glass. And this was, again, a crude tube glass or mold formed glass. And the difference between this and the broad sheet would be the blown plate was more of was hand grinded or hand polished to get that optical clarity. Labor intensive, and that sort of lasted to the 1700s, when instead of it being blown into a mold or blown plate, it was a cast or a polished plate glass. And that's where, it was cast on a bed of metal essentially, and then hand grinded to be optically clear and without imperfection. And and that was, that was a popular method through the 1800s. And right around the mid 1800s, you find the improved cylinder glass, which is essentially a mold blown cylinder, but into steel or metal molds, which would provide a cleaner surface and larger sheets, and eventually that would move on to what's called rolled plate pre 1900, which was essentially glass through rollers, to create
more industrial.
Right, a flat surface. And then right now, the 1900s is when we started moving away from handmade glass and more into mechanical or machine-made products. And that's where you find the sort of early versions of float glass and pulled mechanical cylinder glass, where they would pull cylinders of glass, 40 feet in the air and then cut them down, mechanically, and of course the four-call method, which is known as drawn glass, which is vertically drawn, which is still made to this day. It's one of the products that we still that there's still a machine.
Does that give you the vertical lines in it?
Right, exactly. There's a vertical draw line. So that for all intents and purposes, that particular restoration window glass tends to be more viewed as patterned. It has that sort of vertical wave, whereas a lot of these other ones we're talking about here tend to be more centrifugal or organic in nature.
Right.
But that is a very popular style of glass, and it was a very clean, meticulous style of glass made. It was probably the cleanest form of glass up until around the 1950s, when Pilkington perfected that float glass method, and where glass, and that's how window glass is made today, which is floated a bed of tin and with these meticulous surfaces and perfect uniformity in terms of thickness, and and that's how modern glass. So 1950s is pretty much the last major upgrade of glass, and now I can't say that now. You got a lot of technical products, solar glasses, and
glass. Yeah, that's true.
So the advances have gone beyond window glass, but as far as
the process for making the glass hasn't changed. It's the coating or what they're putting on it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And thinner, and they are getting thinner. With these these processes. These obviously in your phone and whatnot. In the 1950s, you couldn't even think about that sort of comes to glass.
And that's why it breaks when you drop it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So did what was I thinking about? I was thinking I've bought vertical lined patterned glass for bathroom restorations. That's
Okay.
one of the ones.
Vertical. When you say vertical line pattern glass, are you talking about the restoration style glass or the ribbed glass, like a fluted?
The ribbed.
Gotcha.
So is that different than the vertical?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a pattern glass. When I talk about four-call glass or drawn glass, these are more it's optically clear, but when you get up
when you look
up
close.
to it, right? When you get up to it, you see these fine vertical lines, and with those lines runs the pattern of the glass. So the pattern of the distortion. Yeah.
I'll
So
have to pay attention to some like early 1900s buildings and see if I can notice that. Yeah, I know. You can definitely see the progression even in architecture then in the the glass being very small and then getting bigger and bigger.
Right.
So I'll have to look for that. Our house is built in the 20s, and we still have there's a few bubbles and things, but I'll have to look and see if I can see any lines.
Yeah, I'll get you a sample set. I'll send you.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So talk to me about. We've talked a little bit about it, but talk to me about the products and services that you offer.
Sure. So pretty much, I mean, the focusing on the preservation or the restoration, and Hollander Historic, the division that handles a lot of the restoration and preservation products, or all of them, I should say. We've crafted the restoration window glass line to be able to provide a product to customers, both looking for historical significance and the proper aesthetic. So, I mean, of course, there's buildings that are on the register or of historical significance that really, they're only going to consider cylinder glass. So they're not going to consider a facsimile or a recreation type product. So, so for those types of projects, and we have our old world colonial product line, which is essentially imported from Saint-Just in France, and that's all our cylinder or hand blown products. It comes in a light, a full, and a heavy crown style, and these are our hand blown products. Outside of that, you start getting into our circa line of products, which are circa 1700, circa 1800, and circa 1900. And these products were made to create a sort of utility product that's temperable, larger sheet sizes, thicker. I mean, these products are made in upwards of 10 millimeter if need be. Okay. And again, they're temperable. So, they can be edge polished, beveled in certain thicknesses. So these are recreation products. I mean, we've put a lot of research and development into their design, to give them certain aesthetics, certain characteristics to meet certain time periods, and the circa 1700 being the oldest, sort of thinnest. That would be something that could work for a crown glass restoration or a blown plate. And then the circa 1800 is a little bit more wavy, wavy with pits. And then the circa 1900, that's a light to moderate wave, not a lot of characteristics on the surface, except for the wave and whatnot. And then we also have, like I mentioned before, the four-call product, the vertically drawn glasses. These you'll find on our website as the Restover and the Goethe glass products. These are made with that four-call method that I mentioned earlier, the vertically drawn method. Again, they're beautiful products. They're low iron, but they do have that sort of patterned distortion look to them. But again, that's something, if you're going for that four-call glass, all four-call glass would have had that pattern, so that you find that, we're working on a beautiful restoration out in Beverly Hills right now. That's it's a 1920s home, and it's the original product is a beautiful four-call glass, and it's that's the product that they're going to be using for the restoration, and it's available in large sheet sizes, upwards of 80 inches, and this sort of thing. But we are essentially a fabricator and a distributor, so we're not an installer. We don't go out in the field and do the installations and whatnot. That's sort of the product. I don't know if I'm missing anything there, but perhaps our rest.
Well, I was curious about the insulated restoration glass, because we've used restoration glass before, but I was excited to see you could get it tempered too, but then I saw that you have an insulated units, and I was curious about that.
Sure. Yeah, well, we have our insulating line is essentially geared for our restoration products and our pattern products, essentially products that have an uneven surface or, that aren't commercially flat on both sides. You tend to, a normal commercial insulating line would have trouble maybe insulating those, but ours is geared towards that. We use a single seal spacer, low profile with and in conjunction with our low E products or other types of coated products, we can create insulated units as thin as a 1/2 inch all the way up to an inch overall, and even beyond an inch overall, depending on what's called for in the makeup.
Right.
But insulated products are certainly they're certainly popular.
Yeah, and we've done several projects where we've built true divided light windows, but put in smaller insulated units in each part of the grid, so that you still get the same historic look with the energy efficiency.
Right.
So so the fact that then you could get it with the wavy glass, I was excited about that. So I'm glad I was glad to learn about that.
For sure.
Yeah. So talk to. I know you mentioned the project that you're doing in Beverly Hills, but talk to me about any notable projects that your products have been used in, or I guess that's the right word.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess more so recent. I mean, the products find themselves being used in all types of obviously private residences and commercial and restorations. But more so recently, we've been doing a lot of restoration work down in. For the architect of the Capitol down there in D.C.
Okay.
They tend to use our products. The Cannon House office building, the Smithsonian are two that come to mind. In DC, and actually, matter of fact, we just did the skylights at the Lincoln Memorial. So when you walk through the Lincoln Memorial, right above Abe Lincoln's head, you see it's a ceiling of Alabama marble. But above that, in the penthouse, are about 40 panels of essentially it's a corduroy pattern with a chicken wire interlayer. So we have it's an actual, not the printed chicken wire I mentioned earlier. It's an actual chicken wire interlayer. And that lets the light through the Alabama marble, which shines on on Abe Lincoln.
Right.
It's and that's a beautiful. As a matter of fact, they did that restoration because they just did the Washington Monument. So now you can go to the top of the Washington Monument and look out. There's a porthole there. You can look out and you could see the top of the Lincoln Memorial. So they wanted to fix up the top of the memorial for that.
Oh, I can see that.
It came out. I mean, it came out beautifully. Matter of fact, as soon as this, as all this, the coronavirus stuff is over, I plan on getting down there and going to that vantage point up there in the top of the Washington Memorial and taking some nice shots.
Oh yeah,
Of that project. But aside from that, the greater another one that comes to mind is is Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. The greater property there has a barn that's recently been restored, and you can have you could rent it out for weddings.
Oh yes, yeah.
And they're using a Circa. They used a Circa product to restore that barn. So if you find yourself, that's in Mill Run, Pennsylvania. So if you find yourself out there, you have all the windows in that barn house or that farmhouse rather, are all Hollander Circa glass, and then. Of course, universities. I mean, Princeton, Yale. I mean, the Yale, the Memorial Boathouse at Yale has all circa 1900, 3/16 circa 1900 in it. Matter of fact, if you check out our website on restorationwindowglass.com on that projects tab, you'll see a beautiful photo of that boathouse, and really how the circa 1900 that photo really shows how the circa 1900 really shines. It really is a great product when viewed at all angles, especially at distance. And that's where you find, I was just at an appointment earlier today, matter of fact, where, someone requested me bring large samples, and it was a beautiful 7-acre property. And the house, matter of fact, is a 1700s restoration in Central Jersey. And and they wanted to hold it up. Hold up a big piece of glass and view it from yards and 100 yards away, so they could see how the sun actually reflected. Mm-hmm. There's people that put a lot of thought into the glass, and there's the other end of the spectrum where they don't even want to think about the glass. But the ones that do put thought into glass, I mean, they put a lot of thought into it for sure.
Right, and I think too, that's one of the details that that matter, that people don't necessarily realize that it matters, but when you're looking at the overall building, using the right, type of glass for the time period, or using the, the right types of screws, like those are little details that people that know what they're looking at would notice that maybe regular people don't.
Exactly. And glass is such a major detail. I mean, now that, over the past 10 years, I've come to appreciate it a lot more.
Right.
But when I walk up to a property now and you could see, you see if it's a, historical property, it's got that flat glass in it, you see, it's just like, it really, it's almost like it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like, you really want movement, especially when you have some of these grand estates that we deal with. It's almost a shame when we find that, when they have just flat glass in there, and you see,
oh yeah,
it really use the movement of old world glass.
Yes, I agree. So, what are, from your vantage point, do you see any challenges or trends in preservation?
In terms of preservation in glass, I mean, when you talk about, energy and energy codes,
yeah.
I mean, these tend to be, these are, or in terms of hurdles that I could foresee, especially in the New York area.
Right.
There's a newer energy code that's actually been enacted partly, and I think it's going to go through even further, where very, very strict energy codes where certain restoration window glass insulated products may have met code before aren't going to meet code, going forward,
right.
because of certain hurdles in what products you can combine in the makeup. So
right.
when you're dealing with commercially flat glass and commercial insulation, I mean, you can use, every coating under the sun and every spacer and to achieve these, these perfect U values, or, these desired,
right.
efficiencies. But especially in New York, there's going to be a sort of how insulated restoration glass is used. There will be some sort of catch-up need be on the behalf of us manufacturers in making sure we can
right.
provide these U values and these efficiency values that are going to be required for especially New York City. And as New York City goes, the world goes.
Right.
So those energy codes will be a standard across the United States for sure.
And I wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, I wonder if the existing building code, because there is flexibility there with the already built buildings, I wonder if they'll give any leeway for that in the energy code when they're adopting it.
Status.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that, but often I've seen that oftentimes, but where people really struggle with that, like one problem that's been posed to me, and they're like, why are we having to meet energy code on this part of the building? But they were building an addition. So you had to meet it on the new portion of the building, not necessarily the existing portion. So, which is kind of crazy too, because, it's still all the same building.
Right. Yeah, that's things like that are, fall through the cracks.
Right. Well, yeah. And so I'm curious, but yeah, I think that there has been more and more enacting of energy codes as we're starting to, look at ways to do things more sustainably and more in a greener fashion. So I think that's really something important to look at in preservation. So how can I usually ask this, is there anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you or that you remembered while we were talking?
No, not off the top of my head. Okay. I think we hit.
Okay.
I think I did a lot of what I wanted to bring up. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So how can our listeners contact you?
You could reach me here. I'm based out of our East Coast showroom sales office here at 26 Journal Square in Jersey City, New Jersey. But as far as contacting me by phone, it's 732-346-1211, and my email address to reach me at this office is East. This is Hollander Glass East, so it's east@hollanderglass.com, and that'll come directly to me. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And we will, when we put this up on our website, we make sure all of that contact information is there. So if somebody listens and needs to go back and look, they can go to the website and see it. Easy. Beautiful. Okay. Did you have any offers? We didn't talk about that before we started.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I offered you one of those sample packs.
Oh, yes.
So if anybody hears this and they reach out to me and they'd like a Hollander Historic sample pack, which will include essentially an 8x10 of all the different restoration window glasses that we offer, the Hollander circa 1700, the 1800, the 1900, both versions of that four-call glass, the Restover and the Goethe, as well as all three versions of the Old World Colonial, the mouth-blown glass, the light, the full, and the heavy, and also the Renova. That's actually one product that I didn't mention, which is a low iron, 5 millimeter, sort of heavy, moderate to heavy wave. But that's used in a lot of cabinetry and whatnot. But all those are in the pack. So yeah, so if you mentioned that you heard this podcast and you shoot me an email or get me by phone, we'll get one of those sample packs out to you.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.